There you go.
All right, this is Monday, May the 17th, 2021, 1:30. We're starting the Housing Advisory Commission meeting for the month of May. Can I have a roll call of who's here, please? Starting with Steve?
There you go.
Oh,
Steve
okay.
Schnabel, present.
Glenn?
Here.
Okay. Bud?
Present.
Jason?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
Nicola?
Yes.
I'm here, and Scott has said that he has another commitment, so he won't be here. Okay, call to order approval of the agenda. Everybody have a copy of the agenda, and does everybody have any additions or corrections that they want to put in? Let's have an approval motion first, and then we'll add for that.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Bud. Second? Steve, was that you? Okay, thanks, Steve. All right, so now are we approving the agenda? Anybody have any additions or corrections? I would like to add a piece of new business, Sam. Questions for the community survey, which are due June the 30th. If I could just give an outline and then we can think about it for a month. Okay. All right, so do we have a vote of approval for the amended agenda? Roll call, Steve?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Okay, Bud?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Nicola?
Yes.
Okay, that works. We'll take that. Okay, now we're going to approval of the April meeting minutes. Hopefully everybody got a chance to read the tome. Do we have a motion for approval of the April 2021 minutes?
I so move.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Shauna. Okay. Any corrections to the April 21 minutes? Okay, let's go ahead and have a roll call vote to approval. Steve?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Bud?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Nicola?
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay, good. Now let's move quickly on to new business. Steve, this is all in your court since you had all the information. So if you could give us a short rundown, please.
My contact was Mark Mercer, the city fire chief, who was an acquaintance when I was in the Hamilton Rotary. He was very upfront about sharing information. I sent him some questions. He responded in writing, and also had reached out to a staff person I've not met, somebody who's in the planning department. What I'm told is that it took about 18 months for them to move the process forward. It was championed primarily out of the planning department, but the fire department has carried a list for a long time of commercial properties that they have chosen to place on a do not enter list should there be a fire. So that kind of relates to, all of their emphasis would be on the surrounding properties as opposed to that property itself. So this does create a registration, and there was an article in yesterday morning's Journal News that said that so far there has only been one commercial property registered, and that's the old Beckett Paper building, where there have been some substantial fires already. Apparently it doesn't relate to residential as yet, but again, the city has been very active in using the, oh gosh, but it's the countywide project of buying vacant properties and repurposing.
It's the land bank process.
Right, land banking. So that's been effective with some of the residential properties. In any case, and another interesting piece, any rental property that serves more than 4 residences is considered commercial. And I may not have a completely clear understanding of the definition of that right now. All of the funds, they don't see this being a moneymaker by any means. They do use utility information to determine locations that are probably not being habitated or used. And the funds that they generate from any of the fees are really basically underwriting what's going on to staff the process. Fire was very, very interested in seeing that this happens, and that's why Chief Mercer is very satisfied that he's been given the responsibility, the lead responsibility moving forward. And that's basically what I understand so far. And he's very open to meeting with us, talking with us, visiting, responding to other specific questions.
So Steve, is Chief Mercer eager to expand this into the residential area?
He certainly sees it as an important fire safety issue and feels that it could be advantageous in encouraging property owners to invest more quickly in property improvements rather than allowing things to deteriorate and become blighted.
Any other questions for Steve? Sam, did you have a question or did you want to make a comment?
My only comment was that the city of Oxford is not a member of the land bank.
Gotcha. All righty. Okay.
Sam, do we have properties that might be potential land bank sites, or are we so different? In talking with Mark, one of the things I realized was that most of our commercial properties are in full use. And that's having been looking for some commercial space and not finding any that's reasonable. But
I could respond to that, but I think that's just gonna, yes, I have an answer to that, but I think that would lead to a much bigger agenda item. So it's up to you, Sherry, if you want to get into that or not.
I think if Steve has a question or has a concern, I think you could go ahead and respond, sure.
So yes, there are properties. There's not a high number, but there are some blighted properties that would benefit from the city being a member to facilitate the possible acquisition of property, not necessarily tax foreclosure or otherwise, but just from the sense of key properties that are in locations where they're having what I call the broken window effect. I think other people might use that phrase. So obviously there would be an acquisition cost, but the land bank is set up to help to facilitate the transfer of the property to a viable use. And so we don't have a lot. And I think that's probably what makes Oxford different, is we're not a kind of a quote Rust Belt city where we have a lot of industrial land that's vacant because of the exit of an employer or something like that. So it hasn't been a high priority here, but we could be if city council administration and so forth felt that it would be a good option. I've brought it up a couple times, but it hasn't moved forward any farther. So yes.
Is there a cost for the city to join?
There's not a cost.
So Glenn, at one point, weren't you interested in broken window type concerns?
Absolutely. I mean, I would put forth a motion to recommend that we join this just for the optics of we're moving towards making sure that properties are being used and being performing, and just individuals knowing that this is now starting to happen in the city might light fires under those who are normally sitting idle.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, so that statement was your formal motion?
I will formally move that I say that this commission recommends that we apply to become a member of that land bank.
But it's the Butler County Land Bank, is that correct? Thank you. All right, Steve, do you still second?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's have a roll call on this or comments. Do we have any comments?
I mean, are we going to discuss now?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, Sam, are there any downsides to this? Any loss of control, or does this just open up options for us?
It just opens up options. Yeah, there's the process for each property is a transparent process, so it doesn't hem us into anything particular. I just don't know if we have the bandwidth to actually do it. But the fact that sounds like you're going to move that direction will not, the HAC won't stand in the way. I'll put it that way.
So I guess my question is, when you say we might not have the bandwidth, does that mean to actually add properties to that list? Or do you mean to just do the proper functioning for being part of the land bank?
Just for the proper functioning, the administrative side of setting it up.
Okay, so there is a cost just in resources, but I'd imagine it's not too much in general.
Just the human resource side. No, I don't believe there's an administrative cash cost to getting it set up.
Great.
Yes, Glenn?
This is another question to Sam. When you're a member of this land bank, it's more of a you get out what you put into it anyway, right?
Correct.
So you guys don't really have to go and put forth a lot of your office's capital to begin with. Like if you have some idle time, then you can start looking into this, but it's not going to be an immediate draw on your resources.
No, there's just the initial setup from what I understand. And then, if we're not interested in pursuing a property or acquiring a property, then we just continue being a member from what I understand.
But the fact that we are a member says without saying we have the ability to do this if you keep your property non-performing.
I don't know if I could answer that, but sounds like a possibility.
Fair enough. It was rhetorical. I'm sorry about all that.
So basically what we're doing is we're passing a motion that will go to city council. Is that the way it works? Or do our city council representatives just inform city council that we have done this?
It's my understanding that it would just become part of the report that we get on Fridays, that recommendation from the HAC went to the community development department, and that eventually that we'll get another report and another report cycle that says that we have completed that application. I didn't think this would need to go to city council to allow them to do that because it's under 25, or is it 25 grand? Like you guys can do stuff that doesn't require more than 25 grand in capital to spend or whatever.
So 20,000, yep, you're pretty close, is for the expenditure limit. But sometimes the city manager will request city council to weigh in on a policy item. And so I'll let him know about this.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's have the roll call vote. Steve?
Aye.
Glenn?
Yes.
Bud?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Nicola?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. That has passed. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone who spoke. Thank you, Steve, for doing all that work. Okay, still under new business. When we're doing this massive goals for the city, this 1 year thing that we're doing, 2021 goals. The housing goal that they have discussed is increase the diversity of housing options, especially affordable housing, by creating incentives and policy that allows new development to include housing for for all income levels, and to establish an affordable housing trust fund based on the needs from the housing study. Okay, so that said, our commission should be giving questions that we have to put on the community survey. So I want people to be thinking about it and in our June meeting, we will define those questions to submit to the city to put on the community survey. So they need to be things that we're going to want to get good responses for, and questions that are worded in such a way that we'll actually have data to present. Okay. So if you could all work on that for me for a month, that would be great. I'm going to be working with Sam for all of this. So, if the sooner you could get it to us, the easier it'll make us, rather than trying to push everything just before the June meeting. All right. Yes, Bud.
Is there any format or sample of how the questions are worded and how you'd like to see them?
My guess is you can go ahead and send them to me, and then Sam and I will work on it.
Okay.
Is that all right, Sam? Okay. All righty. So once everybody's made that note, let's move on to item 5, change in monthly meeting time and date, open discussion. Sam, you want to kick this off?
Sure, yeah, I always like to bring it up every so often, just in case anyone wants to move things around. There's, as you might guess, there's a very high likelihood that we'll be meeting in person in the coming months. So that could affect your availability or desirability as far as your preferred time of day and day per month. We're on 3rd Monday of the month right now. In the past, it's been the evening, also 3rd Monday of the month. We could put it anywhere you wanted to have it. So any feedback on that, we'll take it. And we don't, at this point, have hybrid meeting technology. So it would be either all on Zoom or all in person, with a high likelihood that it's going to be going all in person. We don't have the technology to do both. So I sent out a survey just to the boards that I staff, which was planning, BZA, housing advisory, HAPC, and I got well over 90% felt they were ready to come back to meeting in person in July. So that's I just want to put it out there. We don't have to talk about this once a year or any certain time, but it's a good opportunity. So let me know your thoughts right now if you want.
Yeah, Sam, when you say you don't have the dual technology, does that just apply to Zoom, or is there a way someone could call in?
So it has to do with our meeting rooms, because our conference rooms do not have cameras and microphones in them. So historically, we have met in a conference room when we met in person, and those rooms are not equipped for that. So, and they probably won't be by the time the open meetings rules change. So that we'll have to have in-person meetings, it looks like, in July, unless there's some last-minute legislation. So the council chambers, the conference rooms, we just don't have the equipment. I believe there's a police department conference room that may have that technology, but I don't know if we'll have that distributed widely by July, nor will we have the staffing to be able to kind of mediate someone calling in during a live meeting.
Okay.
That's in person.
Well, the only issue that I have is that I work during the day in Hamilton, and during getting to Oxford and back in the middle of the day makes my workday really short, and probably isn't going to make my boss very happy. If we could move it to 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon, I could do that, as long as it's on. I know nobody wants to get up for a 7 a.m. meeting, but as long as it's on an end of the day, I'm much better off. However, I realize that in most people's schedules, that's the busiest time of the day. So that I'm just putting my 2 cents in.
I'd certainly be up for accommodating that. I don't necessarily need it, but if it helps you out, it doesn't interfere with my schedule, especially if we keep sort of early in the week and within the first 3 weeks of the month.
That would work for me too. I'm pretty flexible.
We work until 6:30 here, so it would be fine with me at the end of the day.
Nicola?
I think I could make that work for one day in the month. It's fine.
Okay. Steve?
I'm good with that.
Are you? Glenn, we haven't heard from you.
I mean, we did it before, easy to do it again.
Okay, all right, Sam, so you take it from there. 4 is fine, 3:30 is fine, whatever makes people's lives happier. 3:30 or 4 people?
I could take either, but I'd throw out 3:30.
That's good for me too. And would this start next month, or would it start when we're in the face-to-face meetings?
Face-to-face.
Glenn, you're okay with 3:30?
Yeah.
Okay, Sean, okay? And Nicola, are you okay with 3:30?
Yes. Yes.
All right, Sam, is that all right with you? 3:30? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all very kindly for being accommodating. It's going to make my life a lot easier. Okay, old business. Sam, can you put the 2021 revisions up, please?
Yes.
I know you haven't had a lot of time to look at this, but Sam asked me to redo it and rank it in terms of priorities. So that's what I want to hear. I want to hear people's input, not only in terms of text and what we're looking at, but input in terms of priority ranking. So the first one, can we make this a little bigger?
Yes.
Okay, the first
Let
one is,
me
yep,
get
yep.
this guy.
Oh, okay, oh, there we go. Thank you. Develop sources for housing trust fund by June 2022, because we're already in June 2021 pretty much. Pursuant to the H&A study, HAC will work with city staff to define sources for development of the housing trust fund, using grants and other sources to be identified during the 2021 year, as well as the assigned percentage of the transient guest lodging tax defined by city council resolution or ordinance for 1 bedroom or more. These funds will be specifically used for rent and eviction prevention through the Family Resource Center and cash incentives for developers to encourage development of affordable housing and forgivable or low interest loans for families to purchase homes within the city of Oxford. Comments, please.
This is Steve. I like it a lot, and I think it's a very high priority for us.
Would you rank it 1, Steve?
I'm not at the point yet of deciding order.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Anybody else have comments about number 1?
It's very
Yes.
important to me as well, and I would probably rank it 2 because for me, shelter is number 1.
Right. Sort of figured that was going to be your answer. Bud, you had a comment?
Yeah, a question for you. 1 and 6, the home purchase assistance program, is that not going to be part of the housing trust fund, or is that going to be a separate thing, or should they be combined? And I agree about the shelter item.
Oh, you want
That's-
to, you would like it to be number 1?
I think that's probably the number 1 immediate. But I'm wondering if 1 and 6 should be combined, or if they're a different, maybe there was something different developed that I wasn't aware of.
I think we were initially talking about 2 separate things.
Okay.
Sam, can you shed some light on that?
Sure, be glad to, Sherry. I think the issue is that, or the concern rather, is that the funding or the revenue for a housing trust fund could be very sporadic if there's not some kind of a regularity to it. So the focus for that is more on where can an ongoing revenue stream be identified, because right now it's a big fat zero. And while there could be some initial funding from whether it's rescue plan or somewhere else, I think Housing Advisory Commission was looking for something that's going to have some regularity to it. And so the first-time home buyers or down payment assistance or any kind of a special program for that could live separately as either farmed out, to a third party, or maybe it's done by the city, maybe it's not. But that's kind of why I think Sherry was looking at that as two different animals.
Thank you.
Okay, so so far we have two, just to reevaluate, we have two comments to move number 3 up to number 1. Let's keep going with the different points. Impact analysis on overlay on R1A and R1B. By June 1st, 2022, the city of Oxford will have completed an impact analysis of incorporating the neighborhood conservation overlay occupancy restrictions into R1A and R1B zoning districts without requiring any petition from the owners. This goal is intended to maintain integrity of single-family neighborhoods by protecting them from the domino effect of student-focused rental housing. Glenn, was this your baby at one point?
Sort of. Right. I kind of incepted 1 and 2, but regarding this one, I would like to make a minor change for the end of the statement where it says student-focused rental housing.
Yes.
I would rather change that to for-profit housing, because a new rapidly creeping up issue with housing inventory in Oxford is that transient guest lodging. And I didn't want to narrow the focus of this particular bullet point with just student housing.
Okay, any other comments about Glenn's change?
I don't agree with that. I think that Airbnbs are fine in those neighborhoods.
Okay.
I like it because it looks more friendly to the university, and it seems to me this city is always very worried about that.
I sort of have mixed thoughts in terms of the average Airbnb usage, which is sometimes just an extra room or in-law suite. That's fine, but if Airbnb is purchased, if we're talking about a building that has high density, and then each one is sort of rented out instead of as a hotel, but as an Airbnb of sorts, then that would sort of be the same thing as high density student housing in terms of problems.
So just to kind of follow up on that, like if we're going to hope that transient guest lodging taxes go to the housing trust fund, I wouldn't want to take those neighborhoods out of the equation if somebody wanted to purchase a full house in order to do Airbnb. I personally live in a neighborhood with a couple. So that's part of where I'm coming from. Is I do agree that an Airbnb can take away from housing stock if the whole house is used, but I don't think that that's going to overtake the entire town. There's only so much that the town can handle as far as like parents or others that are affiliated with the university coming in.
Well, I could chime in there, Sherry, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think what we could do based on these comments is do an analysis that doesn't preclude the policy from going one direction or the other, but gives some cause and effect kind of scenarios that, because I think the original reason why this started, just for Bud's benefit, is because the mile square gradually changed over in the 60s, 70s, and 80s to student rental, and the longer term folks, that were living there felt pushed out. And so that's kind of morphed over the past several years into, okay, what are some other things that have more to do with economics and less to do with the neighborhood character? And so I think we can address both of those things in an analysis and without necessarily steering the policy one way or the other. And, you know, it's an analysis. It's not judging it on the merits, but I realize too, as kind of Glenn pointed out, is the way the wording is given it basically says, you know, we've already determined that it's negative, so therefore we want an analysis to support that. And so if you wanted to, we could just delete that sentence completely and just do the analysis.
The other question that I had was, since it's an overlay district, couldn't you create certain definitions in that conservation overlay district? So you could tweak it on what we're really talking about.
That's a possible outcome. The districts already exist, so we've got about 20 of them.
Right.
So it's not a new thing. But yeah, that's a potential outcome.
Okay.
So, Sam, do you want to work on putting 2 alternative 2s in for the next meeting so we can discuss them? One with Bud's idea and one with Glenn's idea. Does that make sense?
I'm done right now. I think it's just delete that sentence and move on.
Okay, all right.
I agree with Sam.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just delete this sentence and move on. Okay, evaluations of city assistance for FRC shelter and housing. This I kept in this year, and I think we can do it by September. By September 21st, HAC, working with city staff, will evaluate the efficacy and ongoing needs of Oxford's 2020 pilot shelter housing assistance transitional housing plans. Using that evaluation, we're going to have to work with HAC on this. So Nicola, you know, I don't want to dump this all in your lap, but you're going to be very important in this. Using that evaluation, HAC will identify ways to make these programs sustainable through supplemental funding streams and non-deleterious opportunities for cost savings, responsive to our ongoing evaluations and with the goal of funding 2 years and beyond each evaluation. Nicola, do you have a comment specifically on this?
I'm happy to work on the evaluation, but you know, I was looking at point 1, especially the development of affordable housing and the shelter in terms of priorities and goals, and just kind of going back to Jason's comment, you know, the shelter is important, but the shelter is often a temporary housing for people, and you know, they can't live in a shelter for beyond a certain period of time. So from the shelter, where do they go? And I think that's the problem we've always had here in terms of finding the next step or the transition to affordable housing. So I think of developing affordable housing is probably as important as keeping the shelter, if not more important.
Okay, so you would move 3 to 2?
Or alongside 1. Sorry for being complicating, but
No, I agree that those are my top 2, with maybe number 6 coming in as the third one.
Okay, so what we could do, we can put the 1A and 1B and then move to 3 and eliminate 2 altogether.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Steve and Nicola there. All of them are important to me. I just focus on shelter first because it's in terms of, you know, human need, the first thing is getting a roof over your head and then finding a way to sustain it. But they're all similar to me in importance.
Right. I mean, I agree too. And like, again, you know, if you're talking about sheltering somebody long term, having an apartment or a house, that should be a goal, a long-term goal. And even though if we have, a homeless shelter for whether just for the winter months or even through the year, people can stay there for maybe 3 months to the max. But what happens after that? And I know here that it's taken us longer than 3 months to find housing for people who are in our shelter. Somebody just managed to find housing yesterday after being in our shelter for the entire time, and a little bit beyond. So having shelter alongside the development of affordable housing would be top priority for me.
And if I could add, is that one of the toughest times that we have, both in Hamilton and in Middletown, and it sounds like it's the same, of course, in Oxford, is that transitional period after someone has timed out of the shelter and
Yes.
before they can get permanent housing. And that gap can be, if they've applied for public housing, can be anywhere from 6 months to 9 months until their name comes up on the list. So they might have a 3, 4, 5, 6 month period of time where they have to find some other kind of shelter. And it's also the same process, unfortunately, with Family Promise, which is a family shelter process, that they are running out of places and running out of time when people are transitioning out. People are being put into, family groups are being put into hotels on Route 4. So that is a real issue that the county as a whole faces.
Thank you, Bud, for describing my job.
I'm sorry.
So thank you for describing my job.
Oh, okay. I keep forgetting, Sherry. So we think we solved some of Linda's problems. So
Yeah, but my problems are more than Linda's problems.
oh, okay.
Okay. All right. So at this point, we're discussing parallel programs of 1 and 3. Let's go on to 4 to see how we're going to see where that stands. Increase in dwelling unit density. By September 1st, 2022, the City of Oxford will have adopted a policy, resolution, or ordinance to allow increased dwelling unit density or other zoning incentive in exchange for guaranteed monthly rent. The rent will be at or below the target set by 2020 Housing Needs Assessment, and or the developer will make equivalent payments to the city's Housing Trust Fund in order to receive said zoning incentive. Additionally, evaluate the risks and benefits for increasing allowable building heights, which Sam said he's working on, so we can take that out, Sam, is that correct? Sam?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just, so taking it out.
Taking the addition, evaluate the risks and benefits for increasing allowable building height. You said you were working on that, is that correct?
Yeah,
So we can take that out?
sure.
Okay.
Or we could leave it in and then we've got a win eventually when we're doing an evaluation of our report.
Well, that's, Sam, how do you want to do that?
I'd say leave it in. I'd prefer to
Okay.
leave it in.
Okay.
So I would put that above the impact analysis on the overlay.
I would as well.
Okay, everybody else, how do you feel?
Fine with me. Those are my 2 lowest ones.
Okay.
I just want to say, Steve, that we got a lot of developments down the pike, and I'd love to see that stuff in there as soon as possible to help increase, low income housing and affordable housing.
I'm negotiable.
Okay, item 5, Western Knolls Development Participation as an ongoing working relationship with city staff and within the guidelines set forth by the HNA. HAC will provide regular comments on development details of the city's 47-acre Western Knolls property through the design process by influencing the development of the remainder of the property consistent with the themes of the 2019 design charrette until the property is completely developed. Comments?
I like where it's at.
Okay. Alrighty. Home Purchase Assistance Program. By September 22nd, HAC working with the city staff will explore creation of Home Purchase Assistance Program and potentially recruit partners to ensure adequate resources, capability in administering such a program. This could be set up as a forgivable loan program where the balance owed goes away after a certain number of years or diminishes on a prorated basis. Happy where it is? All right, so it looks to me like we have a comment on the table right now of putting number 4 before what will be, before the impact analysis. Comments on that?
So I think I have a suggested order. I just need a second to work out which number is which.
Well, right now we have 2 number 1s. Number 1 and old number 1 and old number 3 are now number 1.
Yeah, and it gets more complicated if we're going to make multiple number 1s. But like my first thought was to sort of switch 2 and 6.
So you want the impact analysis overlaid down at the very bottom?
To me, it's the least important. I don't know how other people feel.
Well, let's hear how other people feel. Glenn, your voice is important.
Regarding number 6, my question is, how are we going to fund it? I would rather do this stuff in order where we fund the things and then we actually can do the things.
Okay.
I can speak to that.
All right, Sam.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that I've talked about with some fellow city staff is we very likely will be bringing a suggestion on some of the federal funding to city council that would essentially do an outside contract with a provider that would make that happen. And then the longer term would then be a revenue stream of some kind, whether it's a lodging tax or something else, an in lieu fee, I'm not sure. But so our thinking was that this would be sooner rather than later, and it would not be from existing general fund to get it started, but it would be from outside funds to get it started. So to your question, Glenn, we feel a lot more comfortable about this actually happening than we did a year ago.
All right. If it has a model that is sustainable, which means like we can keep it running without leaching from other things that we have going on, move it up. I just want to make sure that we have funding in place to do things rather than putting carts before horses.
This to me just fits in with the idea of not just providing shelter, but then moving people towards permanent housing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what I'm hearing right now from the people we've heard from is that number 6 would move up to
3 is what I'm hearing.
yeah, but then 4 was supposed to go up also.
So then I think that becomes 5.
4 becomes 5.
No,
Okay,
no, 4 stays 4.
4 stays 4. Sorry about that. Okay, 4 stays 4. 6 becomes 5. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
6 becomes 3.
Okay. Let's see how people feel about that. Where does then the impact analysis goes to 4? No. Where's the
That
impact?
one was going to go last, I think,
That
assuming
one's gonna
everybody's
go
on board.
Last. Okay. So at this point, I think what I hear from some of you is that 1 and 3 should be prioritized. Let's do it that way. Then comes the home purchase assistance program.
Mhm.
Yes.
Then comes the increased dwelling unit capacity. Then 5 is now the last one.
Well, and then the impact overlay comes after that,
Oh, yes, that's correct. Thank you. Yes.
impact analysis.
5 stays 5 and impact analysis is 6. Yes, thank you, Jason.
So then the current order would be reordered 1, 3, 6, 4, 5, 2.
1, 1.
1, 3. Well, I'm just using the current numbers for the way you put them together.
Gotcha.
1, 3, 6, 4, 5, and 2. And then
That
they
works for me.
renumbered 1A, 1B.
Yes, yes. Sam, does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Yes, Jason, you're happy. Any comments about unhappiness or confusion? Okay.
Yeah, I've talked too much. Please speak up if anybody doesn't agree with that. I don't want to lead everything.
I think everybody seems to be in agreement about the new order. All right, Sam, just to make sure that we have it down correctly, the current 1 is still 1. The current 2 is now 6. The current 3 is now 1.
Yep.
The current 4 stays 4. Ah, wait, I skipped 3. Oh no, I haven't gotten down there yet. Okay, the current 4 is still 4. Current 5 is now 6, and the current 6 is now 3. Got it? Okay.
Yep.
Everybody happy? I assume that's yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But Sam, I'm not done bugging you about forever.
I got it. You won't be forgotten, Shauna.
Just understand that we now have different priorities, and so we need to focus our efforts on what everybody has now established as our priorities. Okay. All righty. So any other comments, corrections, statements? Yes, Steve.
Is it our intent now for each of us to take one of these areas as to be responsible for tracking and reporting on in future meetings?
I think that has been changed. Sam, you want to elaborate on what you had suggested to me? That this is just telling the city what we want them to focus on?
Yeah, I think this is more just making so that we're all reading from the same sheet of music. I don't see any of you really as folks that are going to be drafting legislation or policy unless you want to start doing that. If you want to assign your names to any of these things, you would basically just be the ones to pester city staff. That's about all that I see it, or speak at city council or something like that. But as long as we don't have, as long as I don't leave the city or Zachary Moore doesn't leave the city, then I think you just put this in writing and we'll make sure these things happen eventually.
So then what do you see our role for HAC at this point?
Advocacy. I know that doesn't sound very powerful, but it is. You might have to pop into a council meeting. You might have to, when there's a case being heard, you might have to comment on it. As it relates to these different goals. Obviously things like Western Knolls, you're not the ones who are talking to developers, so we're acting on your behalf. That's kind of an ongoing thing. I don't really see that as a priority as much as it's ongoing.
Well, you said pop into city council meetings. Could we also pop into planning commission meetings?
You could. Mm-hmm.
I'll pop into planning. I volunteer.
You're already on it. I would think that we would need additional people, Sean.
Yeah, so as long as Shauna is there.
And
then I think-
Jason.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Jason. Sorry, Jason.
Right.
No worries.
yeah, you've got good coverage there.
Okay.
So I don't think that's really, really a problem. But, keeping watch on the council agendas. If you don't see your items being discussed or heard, then, you might want to speak during public comments, or you might want to write something to a staff member. It doesn't hurt to do those kind of things just to keep things moving. Relying on your council members alone doesn't always, get things done. It helps to hear from multiple voices. So, and then having those crystallized through the community input process, that you kind of talked about earlier, helps to kind of give the full perspective.
Right. Between now and is it October? Sam, we are going to be having, HAC will be hosting a open meeting with the public that we're required to have, or we're asked to have at least one open meeting with the public to solicit their interests and information input on what they want to see in terms of housing for the city. So I think that's going to be taking up a lot of our time between now and then, is trying to figure out how we're going to do this and where we're going to do this, and if we're going to have questionnaires that we do, or if we're going to have just one open meeting that's, we have to have some sort of bell we can ring to stop the comments so they can calm down for a minute. That I think we will, after we have submitted our questions for the community survey the end of next month, then I think we'll focus on organizing and getting that input from the community as our next step. Sam, question? Okay. All right. Questions or comments? Okay. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was specific. Your request for comments was specific to the last thing or just in general. I wanted to add one more thing.
Okay.
We mentioned broken windows theory a couple times, and while I think some of the dynamics of that definitely play out are important to consider, I think we should be cautious in using that, since it was also highly problematic in terms of policing and other things. So yeah,
Okay.
just a comment on that.
Okay. So do you have another term that's better, Jason?
No, I think we should just be specific about what we're worried about rather than throw out that term.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Now, a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Jason, okay, second?
Second.
Shauna, thank you. Let's have a roll call. Jason,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nicola,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
Bud,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
me too. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Sam, we'll probably get together at some point soonish. All right. Take care and work on those questions for the community survey. All righty. Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.